From controversial cheating accusations turning into chaos, to captains publicly destroying their own players on live television. These are the most heated golf moments in Ryder Cup history. What if I told you that one singles match completely changed how we view Ryder Cup intensity? That two players turned the 8th match of Sunday into the most electrifying golf theater anyone had ever witnessed. October 2nd, 2016. Hazeltine National, America trailing 9.5 to 6.5 after Saturday's disasters, desperately needing points to avoid another European victory on home soil. In the crucial 8th singles match, Patrick Reed faced Rory McIlroy, the world's number 2 player against Europe's best. Reed came out like a gladiator. He birdied the first hole and immediately turned to the crowd, arms raised, conducting 40,000 screaming Minnesotans like he was directing a symphony. But McIlroy responded with his own birdie at the second. However, Reed wasn't backing down. The defining moment came at the par 3 6th hole. Reed drained a massive putt and did something no one expected. He walked to the edge of the green, put his finger to his lips, and shushed the European fans in the gallery. The audacity was breathtaking. McIlroy, normally golf's ultimate professional, was visibly rattled, but Rory fired back. After sinking his own crucial putt later in the match, he pointed directly at Reed and cupped his ear to the American crowd. The match swung back and forth. Reed would go 2 up, then McIlroy would claw back. Every hole became a theater of gestures, stare-downs, and crowd manipulation. When Reed finally closed out McIlroy 1 up, most people had just witnessed the greatest Ryder Cup singles match in history, and America had found its new weapon of mass distraction, Mr. Reed. All right, on to the next. Picture a rookie club professional from Ireland, ranked 108th in the world, standing over a 2-foot putt knowing that missing it would crush the dreams of an entire continent. September 24, 1995, Oak Hill. Europe needed 7.5 points from Sunday singles to pull off an American upset. While legends like Faldo and Seve battled up the leaderboard, the Cup's fate rested in the hands of Philip Walton, a quiet Irishman making his Ryder Cup debut in the final match against Jay Haas. When Walton saw Haas on the first tee, he sensed opportunity. By the 15th hole, Walton was cruising at 3 up with 3 to play. Europe was minutes away from glory. But then, everything collapsed. Haas holed a miracle bunker shot on 16 that hit the flagstick and dropped. 2 up became 1 up when Walton missed a short putt on 17. Suddenly, the Ryder Cup hinged on the final hole. On the 18th green, Walton's caddy Brian McLaughlin was chain-smoking, hands shaking worse than his players. The mathematics were brutal. Europe needed just a half point, but Walton had to make bogey while Haas couldn't make birdie. When McLaughlin tried to read the putt, Walton cut him off. "Brian, I've got 2 putts for it. I think I'll take them." The first putt slipped by. Haas missed his birdie chance. Walton tapped in, and Europe had won 14.5 to 13.5. Bernard Gallagher jumped into Walton's arms. "You've just won the Ryder Cup." Walton's reply, "Have I?" Sometimes the biggest moments fall to the smallest names. Moving next. 19 birdies, 18 under par combined. 2 legends playing the golf of their lives, and somehow, impossibly, neither man could do what they had to do. Hazeltine, 2016. While Patrick Reed was conducting crowd symphonies in his match with McIlroy, something equally extraordinary was unfolding further down the course. Sergio Garcia and Phil Mickelson had stumbled into a scoring exhibition that defied mathematical probability. This wasn't heated because of animosity. It was heated because both players caught fire simultaneously, creating a birdie barrage that left galleries abandoning other matches just to witness history. Phil Mickelson, at 46, was supposedly in the twilight of his career. Sergio Garcia had spent decades labeled as the best player never to win a major. Neither had anything left to prove, yet both played like their legacies depended on every shot. The fireworks started immediately. Garcia birdied the first. Mickelson answered at the second. By the 4th hole, Garcia had gone 3 under. By the 6th, Mickelson was 4 under. Neither player had made a bogey, and the match was still dead even. On the back 9, the scoring got ridiculous. Garcia drained a 25-footer on 12 for his 6th birdie. Mickelson chipped in from 40 yards on 13 for his 7th. When Garcia made another long putt on 15, Mickelson immediately responded with a birdie of his own on 16. The crowd had stopped choosing sides and started cheering for golf itself. And then the final hole. Garcia needed birdie on 18 to win. He stood over a 12-footer he'd made thousands of times in practice. The putt caught the lip and, dropped. Match halved. So, the final stats: Garcia 8 under 64, Mickelson 10 under 62. Combined 19 birdies, 0 bogeys. Probably the best match ever. Which brings us to this next one. 4 points down, on American soil, against a US team that had dominated for 3 days. No European team had ever overcome such a deficit away from home. The 2012 Ryder Cup was mathematically over. Except somebody forgot to tell Ian Poulter. Playing the final 4-ball match with Rory McIlroy against Jason Duffner and Zach Johnson, Poulter was 2 down with 5 holes to play. The Americans were closing in on an insurmountable 11-5 lead. Most players would have accepted defeat, but Poulter had other plans. On the par 4 14th, he stuck his approach to 8 feet and drained the putt. 1 down. The crowd stirred, but barely. This was just damage control. The 15th hole changed everything. Poulter's iron shot landed 15 feet from the pin. As he lined up the putt, something shifted in his eyes. The putt rolled true, and Poulter erupted like he'd won a major. Match square. On 16, Poulter found the green in regulation while the Americans struggled. Another birdie putt, another explosion of emotion. Europe was suddenly 1 up with 2 to play. The par 3 17th should have been Europe's undoing. 158 yards over water to a tucked pin. Instead, Poulter hit it to 12 feet and buried another birdie. His celebration was manic now. Then came the 18th hole. Poulter stood over a 12-footer, knowing this putt could resurrect Europe's entire campaign. The ball never looked like missing, rolling into the center of the cup for his 5th consecutive birdie. Poulter's celebration could be heard 3 fairways away. Instead of trailing by 5 points, Europe was only down 10-6. That single point gave Jose Maria Olazabal's team something they'd lost: belief. Sunday's singles became a European avalanche. Luke Donald, Ian Poulter, Paul Lawrie, and Justin Rose all delivered crucial wins. When Martin Kamer faced a 6-foot putt on the 18th green against Steve Stricker, he buried it for the clinching point. Europe 14.5, United States 13.5. The impossible had happened. Up next, they were supposed to be the future of American Ryder Cup golf. 2 young stars who had built a 4-1-2 record together, becoming the faces of USA's resurgence. Fans loved them. Captains trusted them. They seemed destined to dominate for a decade. Then came Paris 2018, and everything exploded in the most public way possible. Captain Jim Furyk made a decision that would haunt American golf. He split up the proven partnership. Patrick Reed and Jordan Spieth, America's most successful Ryder Cup duo, were separated for the first time. Spieth was paired with rising star Justin Thomas. Reed was left to struggle alongside Tiger Woods, who was still finding his competitive form after years of personal and physical struggles. The chemistry was immediately toxic. The Tiger pairing lost both their matches, looking uncomfortable and out of sync. Meanwhile, the other duo thrived, winning points and appearing natural together. As Europe built a commanding lead toward a humiliating 17.5 to 10.5 defeat, frustration was written all over Reed's face. After the crushing loss, Patrick Reed could have taken the diplomatic route. Instead, he chose scorched earth. In a New York Times interview, Reed publicly destroyed both his former partner and his captain. The issue's obviously with Jordan not wanting to play with me. The captain put me with Tiger, and that didn't work out. The comments were devastating. Reed had essentially accused Spieth of abandoning him and blamed Furyk for catastrophic leadership. But worse, he aired the team's dirty laundry in America's newspaper of record while the wounds from defeat were still fresh. Coming in next, how ruthless can professional golf get? Try refusing to concede a 6-foot putt when the match is already meaningless to the overall result. The Belfry 1993, Nick Faldo versus Paul Azinger in the final singles match on Sunday. Their rivalry had been simmering since the 1987 British Open at Muirfield, where Faldo edged Azinger by a single stroke to claim his first Open championship. Bad blood had been brewing for 6 years. Now they faced each other with everything on the line. The match was a masterclass in steely determination from both players. Faldo aced the par 3 14th to go 1 up, but Azinger immediately responded with a birdie on the next hole. As they reached the 18th tee, Faldo had regained a 1-up lead. Both players found the green in regulation on the final hole. Faldo made his par, leaving Azinger with a 6-foot birdie putt to have the match. In most circumstances, this would be a routine concession between professionals, a gesture of sportsmanship to end a hard-fought battle. Faldo had other ideas. He stood at the edge of the green, arms folded, and refused to concede the putt. Azinger would have to make it under pressure. The American, knowing he was about to face a fight much bigger than golf, stepped up and buried the putt in the center of the cup. Team USA had already clinched the cup, but Azinger's defiant moment became the defining image of the week. 2 years later, while reviewing tape of the match after surviving his cancer battle, Azinger delivered the perfect comeback. "Look at that. I had cancer and he still couldn't beat me." Ouch. All right, imagine sitting in a press conference watching one of your own players systematically destroy your reputation on live television while you sit helplessly just 3 feet away. Welcome to Tom Watson's nightmare at Glen Eagles, September 28, 2014. The setup was already toxic. Europe had just demolished the United States 16.5 to 11.5, continuing America's humiliating streak of European dominance. Watson, brought back at age 65 to recapture the magic of his 1993 victory, had been criticized all week for his old-school approach and poor communication. But the real explosion had started the night before. In Saturday's team meeting, Watson took no responsibility for the team's struggles, scoffed at a gift the players had given him, and began the session by tearing into his own players' performance. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Phil Mickelson, benched for an entire session for the first time in 10 Ryder Cup appearances, was seething. 24 hours later, the entire U.S. team sat on the losers' press conference podium. 8 questions had been asked when a reporter innocently asked about what had worked for America in 2008 versus recent failures. Phil lit the fuse. "There were 2 things that Paul Azinger did in 2008. Mickelson began, methodically dismantling Watson's leadership. "He got everybody invested in the process, invested in who they were going to play with, who the picks were going to be. When pressed about whether players had input this week, Phil delivered the nuclear option. No, nobody here was in any decision. The fallout was immediate. The criticism led directly to the creation of the Ryder Cup Task Force and eventually helped the U.S. win at Hazeltine in 2016. Up next, golf caddies don't usually need physical restraint. Golf superstars don't usually chase people through parking lots. But Saturday afternoon at Marco Simone in Rome, normal rules went out the window. The 2023 Ryder Cup was already heated. European fans had been taunting Patrick Cantlay all day with hat-waving gestures, mocking rumors that he was protesting unpaid Ryder Cup participation by refusing to wear team headwear. The atmosphere was electric, bordering on hostile. Then came the 18th hole of Saturday's 4-ball session. Cantlay drained a massive birdie putt to win his match, sending the American side into celebration. His caddy Joe LaCava, Tiger Woods' longtime bagman, grabbed Cantlay's hat and waved it triumphantly at the European crowd. Sweet revenge for a day of mockery. But LaCava didn't stop there. As Rory McIlroy lined up his putt to try and halve the hole, LaCava continued his celebration, waving and gesturing without moving out of Rory's line of sight. That's when Rory lost it. McIlroy marched directly toward LaCava, pointing and shouting at him to back off. Players and caddies from both sides rushed in as the confrontation escalated on the green. But the drama didn't end there. In the parking lot after the round, McIlroy had to be physically held back while continuing to rage at LaCava. Video of the scene went viral within hours, showing multiple people restraining the Northern Irishman as he tried to get at the American caddy. European captain Luke Donald later said LaCava overstepped the mark, while the controversy became the defining image of the 2023 Ryder Cup. The irony? Europe used the parking lot incident as motivation fuel, riding the emotional wave to victory the next day. For this one, we move back to September 1991. The Gulf War had just ended. American patriotism was at a fever pitch, and some U.S. players arrived at Kiowa Island wearing camouflage caps. This wasn't going to be your grandfather's gentlemanly Ryder Cup. The ocean course was designed specifically for this event, but nothing could have prepared it for what became known as the War on the Shore. The first blood was drawn in the opening foursomes match. Seve Ballesteros and Jose Maria Olazabal faced Paul Azinger and Chip Beck in what should have been a routine 4-ball. Instead, it became a rules controversy that poisoned the entire week. On the 7th hole, Olazabal spotted something that made his blood boil. The Americans were switching between 100 compression and 90 compression balls based on wind conditions. This violated the 1-ball rule for foursomes matches. When confronted on the 10th tee, Azinger flatly denied any wrongdoing. But once officials explained that no penalty could be applied, since the violation wasn't caught immediately, Azinger admitted they had changed balls. The damage was done. The American team has 11 nice guys, and Paul Azinger, Ballesteros famously declared, the gamesmanship escalated from there. During Saturday's foursomes, Seve developed a persistent cough during American backswings. Raymond Floyd finally confronted him mid-round, threatening to retaliate if the coughing continued. By Sunday, the atmosphere was toxic. Partisan crowds booed European putts and cheered American misses. Players were openly arguing with opponents over ball drops and line calls. The cup came down to the final match, Hale Irwin versus Bernhard Langer. On the 18th hole, Irwin's tee shot headed for the sand dunes but mysteriously ended up in the fairway. Langer was left with a 6-foot putt to win the cup for Europe. He missed it low, and America had won 14.5 to 13.5. In the celebration, the U.S. team threw Captain Dave Stockton into the Atlantic Ocean, a fitting end to golf's most militaristic Ryder Cup. Coming in next, most Ryder Cup feuds pit Americans against Europeans. But the nastiest, most personal rivalry in modern Cup history? Two European teammates who can't stand the sight of each other. Nick Faldo and Sergio Garcia should be celebrated together as Europe's greatest Ryder Cup warriors. Instead, they've spent over a decade destroying each other's reputations one TV appearance at a time. The poison started flowing at Valhalla in 2008 when Faldo captained Europe to their worst defeat in years, a humiliating 16.5 to 11.5 loss to the Americans. Garcia went 0-2-2 that week, playing some of the worst golf of his Ryder Cup career under Faldo's leadership. But it was Faldo's post-Cup comments that lit the fuse. The 6-time major champion suggested Garcia wasn't just playing badly, he lacked fight because of personal issues, specifically his breakup with Greg Norman's daughter. Garcia stayed quiet for 6 years. Then, in 2014, during Golf Channel coverage, Faldo casually dropped a nuclear bomb. Asked about Garcia's Ryder Cup record, he called the Spaniard useless at Valhalla. The comment reopened every wound from that disastrous captaincy. Garcia waited 4 more years for his revenge. At the 2018 Ryder Cup in Paris, Garcia played brilliantly all week, earning 3 crucial points. More importantly, he passed Faldo to become Europe's all-time leading Ryder Cup point scorer. When asked how it felt to break the record, Garcia couldn't resist twisting the knife. "This means a lot to me. I've passed some of my heroes today, and Nick Faldo. And finally, ever wonder what happens when 40,000 golf fans forget they're at a golf tournament and start acting like they're at a medieval public execution?" September 26, 1999, the country club Brookline. Europe held a commanding 10-6 lead, going into Sunday's singles, just 4 points away from retaining the Ryder Cup on American soil. The mathematics seemed insurmountable. No American team had ever overcome such a deficit. But something darker was brewing in the Massachusetts galleries. This wasn't going to be about golf anymore. Colin Montgomery discovered this firsthand. From the moment he stepped onto the course, fans unleashed a torrent of abuse that crossed every line imaginable. Misses, doubt fire, they screamed, mocking his appearance. Crude comments about his weight echoed across fairways. Personal insults about his family filled the air. Meanwhile, the Americans were mounting their impossible comeback. Tom Lehman, Hal Sutton, and Phil Mickelson grabbed crucial early points. By mid-afternoon, the unthinkable was becoming reality. Then came the moment that defined everything. Justin Leonard's 45-foot birdie putt on the 17th hole against Jose Maria Olazabal. When Leonard's putt dropped, chaos exploded. The entire U.S. team stormed the green. Players, wives, caddies, officials, celebrating like they'd won the cup. For several minutes, they trampled across Olazabal's putting line, completely ignoring the fact that the Spaniard still had a putt to have the hole. Olazabal stood helplessly aside, watching Americans celebrate as if his shot didn't exist. When order finally returned, he missed his 22-footer, and the U.S. completed their 14.5 to 13.5 miracle. Many in Europe still view Brookline as the lowest point of Ryder Cup sportsmanship,